Welcome to Charity Therapy, the podcast where we explore the ups and downs of the nonprofit sector and answer your burning questions. I'm your host, Jess Birken, owner of Birken Law Office, and I'm excited you're here. Imagine hanging out with me and my super smart, funny nonprofit expert pals. You get to ask them anything about your nitty-gritty nonprofit life and get their wisdom for free. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just strapping on your nonprofit boots, we're here to share stories and remind you you're not alone on this journey. So get ready to join the conversation and bring me the tough questions. I ain't scared. Ready to rock? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Charity Therapy. I'm here today with Meghan, per usual.
Hello, hello. So happy to be your per usual co-host. I'm not the exciting guest, but being per usual feels kind of nice too, you know?
Yes. I feel like I'm channeling 1998. I feel like that's an expression I used a lot in college.
I mean, I feel like I always use per usual. So I mean, this tracks. Listeners don't know this about me, but I trend older than I actually am. So sounding like usually an old woman, but we'll take college in 1998 as well. I was 4.
Yep.
So.
Megan's an old soul, shall we say?
Yes.
All right. What are we doing?
All right.
What's happening?
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about some stuff. So you mostly work on the kind of like boring side of the legal industry, right? Like it's just a lot of paperwork. We're not going to court. We're not yelling at each other usually. Like most people would say,
you
this
just
is boring.
said your work is more exciting than mine, which I'm like, hey, good.
I mean, mostly just that
check mark.
I don't do a lot of paperwork. I don't do any of the legal work because guess
That's
what?
True.
Not a lawyer, but it has been fascinating working on this more boring side of the legal industry for me as someone who is not a lawyer. Because it's becoming more and more clear that the paperwork does really matter sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Jess, I know you've been talking to several folks and clients about their data retention policies lately. And before we launch into the actual question, can you tell us what data retention policy is and why nonprofits need to care about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Data retention or records retention policy is basically a tool that tells you how long you need to keep your stuff. So, running any company, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, there are a lot of documents that get generated, different records, emails, meeting minutes, board decisions, employment records, whatever, and different laws sort of make the rules or dictate how long you have to keep each different kind of record. So a records or a data retention policy is really, really important to help nonprofits understand how long they need to keep things. And then anything that you don't legally need to keep, you could choose to destroy. And destroying old data and old records can be a really good practice. I mean, I think nonprofits tend to be toward the other side where they just keep everything because they think somehow it needs to go in a museum someday because the work is super important and they're really passionate about it. But destroying old data is actually a good practice. Storage is cheap. Yes, you could just keep piling on cloud storage for a lot of groups. It wouldn't really matter. But when we do that, we give cyber criminals more opportunities to get more information through ransomware attacks and things like that. And just purging old data periodically just keeps things tidier, keeps it organized, and it can prevent you from getting dragged into litigation issues.
Yeah, that's interesting because, from my perspective, it seems like a housekeeping thing, not something that has any real life importance. And I wouldn't have thought of it as a,
I think most
measure.
People don't.
Right. I just think of I have a family member who saves every receipt she's ever had since 1978. And it's she's been trying to clean it out. And I'm I feel like a lot of nonprofits have that same energy of just I don't know, could be important. We might as well just keep it.
Yeah. Yep. No, totally. I like the auntie with the receipts because, it's all that like heat transfer paper. So she's keeping everything, but they're all blank.
It's all blank. Yeah.
Because that ink like goes away eventually. So you're just like, I've kept all of the receipts.
And I don't even know what they say.
It was disappearing ink. Oh.
Okay. Well, all right. Let's get into why this matters for nonprofits right now in 2025. So here is our listener question. I work at a prominent nonprofit that works directly with trans youth to help access resources. I know that if the government really does start targeting nonprofits, my organization would be on the list. What can we do now to prepare? I don't want to lose my mind over a bunch of contingency plans, but I do want to protect our work and the folks that we serve.
Yeah, this is a great question. And this is, obviously we're getting a lot of client questions that are in this same vein right now. I think executive directors and boards that are really thinking ahead and are trying to be prepared for like every possible outcome. This is something that is definitely coming up for folks. So what I normally would say is for small nonprofits, especially, the simplest data retention policy is 7 years. 7 years generally hits all of the limits and then some for all the like legal documents you need to keep. That's kind of a good rule of thumb. If something is older than 7 years old, you can probably get rid of it. If, though, you want to take a more aggressive approach and be purging more data sooner, then you would want to have a policy that like line item any, let's say, personnel files. They need to be kept for between 1 and 3 years, depending on where you are. Well, you're going to want to purge those at the 3-year mark, and you're going to keep your meeting minutes for 7 years. And so you're going to have a more detailed, more sort of like hard to follow, needs a bit of a system for each thing. You cannot just start dumping records that you legally need to keep, right? And you also cannot purge records or delete anything if you're under investigation, have a pending litigation, or, you have some knowledge that like there's going to be a request for information. In the legal world, we call that a discovery request, where it's like, give us all your records on this topic. You can't destroy anything if you have that situation. So the best time to destroy stuff is now. Right.
Right. So this person who's saying that they work with trans youth, which is one of those, very hot button topics right now that, the Trump administration likes to blow a lot of hot air about. And it's like, if this actually does become something where this organization is being sued for something, they don't want to have all of their, every single client or whatever that they've served in the past, like their data to be made publicly available. That's really the fear here, right?
And that's where the rub is, right? Because keeping data longer than it's required can create a paper trail that you wouldn't have needed to share otherwise. Because if you have it and there's an issue, you have to hand it over. You can't destroy it. But you need to balance things, right? Because any organization, for profit or nonprofit, should have some sort of business analysis. Like historical data can be really important. Keeping a CRM, a donors list, past participants, because those are our future donors. Like maybe we don't want to purge all of that information, but also if it, the winds start to change in a certain direction, maybe in order to protect people's identity, we would want to destroy old participant data so that we don't have a list of all the trans people in the area or whatever. Mm-hmm. This is going to be something that depends on the organization and depends on their particular mission, their particular work. Obviously, if you're a nonprofit medical clinic, you have HIPAA privacy compliance to contend with. If you're operating internationally, you may be subject to like GDPR, right? So like whether you want that participant data, whether you want some of that historic data that's more than X years old that could be purged, that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. And so it's a little bit of like, it depends. And as long as you don't have any current threats, you can always create a plan for like, this is our standard data retention policy. And we go to like, if we go to like threat level orange or threat level red in the world, then we have a sort of like second fallback position, which is in the event that these things start happening in the world, we would go to this more aggressive data purge policy. Could do something like that. But you can't get rid of stuff that you legally need to keep. So that's the main thing.
Yeah, and I feel like you have mentioned a couple of things in this, explanation, but what do you need to keep? So you mentioned meeting minutes, you mentioned like employee personnel files. Like, what about like emails, like, or things like that? Are there any legal requirements to keep sort of the like just miscellaneous communications and things?
No, there's really no. I mean, again, unless you've been served with a lawsuit or a complaint or a criminal charge or something, you don't have to preserve your emails. But then there's just sort of the question of like, at what point, how far back do you need to have email in order to just be able to like do your job? I mean, just this morning, like I got named to Minnesota Monthly's top lawyers by my peers. And I was like, that's so nice. And they're like, hey, you should buy this plaque. And I'm like, I think I already signed up for that. And I'm searching for the email. Don't even get me started on how bad Outlook search is. But it's funny because you do end up searching for old emails. And so like, at what point, is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Is it 18 months? Like, how old is like, I don't care about this anymore. I could delete every email that's older than this. I think that's going to depend. But certainly you can purge. You could purge every email that comes in. You could purge it immediately.
Yeah. Yep. I think that with nonprofits, especially, people get a little bit, we've talked about this before, the feeling like they need to act like government in some ways. And I think that sometimes leads to feeling like they need to paper the file, even though there is no file. And they're talking about like what box lunch to bring to their, volunteer group on Friday. And they just feel like they need to cover their trail no matter what it is. Or even if that's not a top of the mind thought, it's just this kind of unconscious feeling that we need to be super transparent and above board, and I need to be able to like show our work.
Or like, I need everyone to know that I said this
100%, no matter what the motivation
I disagreed,
is.
Or whatever.
Exactly.
And there's something to that as far as like executing your fiduciary duties. There are some emails that could be very relevant to, hiring, firing, making a key corporate decision. And I'm not saying you should purge those emails. If there's an email that becomes like a relevant record, like let's say to a personnel file, that shouldn't just live in your inbox forever until the unlikely event that you need to pull the personnel file. You should be moving that email to the personnel file storage area as that's happening. So maybe that's important for me to clarify, because I do think people tend to just like the inbox is like a dumping ground of everything and we don't move stuff out of there. Or people have like some insane 50 folder system in their inbox.
Speaking from like personal experience, Jess, of what your inbox used to look
maybe calling myself out there a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, the other part of this that we're not really acknowledging is that takes time in the nonprofit world when we're all trying to do more with less, and you don't want to be spending your time on anything that isn't directly mission related because you don't want any overhead and you blah, blah, blah. The idea that you need to spend time creating a file system that is reliable and that you can understand and that when things need to be destroyed is sometimes a little bit of a tough pill to swallow when there is a lot of other work to be done. But as you see here, like it can matter.
It can matter. And, it's like the old adage about planting a berry patch. The first best time to plant a berry patch was 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right? It's like, yeah, it would have been great if you started out like having everything organized and systemic from the beginning, but the second best time is now. And the sooner you get through the pain of like going through this, setting your policy, determining how you're going to figure all this stuff out, the sooner you will have an organized system that makes sense and is compliant. So sometimes you just got to suck it up.
Absolutely. Because this is part of the like very unsexy part of running a nonprofit, you know?
Yes.
You're not directly handing out the meals to the homeless here. Like this can feel not important in the grand scheme of things. And if you continue to ignore all the systems and administrative responsibilities, this nonprofit is not going to last forever. So it's part of the deal. Is sometimes you got to do the boring stuff of saying everything before 2018 needs to be deleted in our inboxes and take the time to do that rather than ignore it forever.
Well, and I'll just say this as my sort of final comment on the thing. You can groan and moan and like be like, this sucks and do this now. Or you can wait until you have some burning fire pain where you're finding out that you have not been retaining all of your employment records appropriately. And you know this because you got a nasty gram from a lawyer about an employee you fired. And now you're even more stressed out and you're in trouble.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
It's either pay the tax now or pay the tax later. And I would prefer to moan and groan with nothing actually bad happening.
Exactly. We all love to complain.
Me. That's just me, though.
Sometimes we got to give ourselves the reason to complain. And this time it's going through all of your Google Drive files or whatever. So,
yeah. And you can also like work with an IT provider. There are plenty of IT consultants who will help you implement things like this. You don't have to do it manually one at a time. You can get help with this. So reach out if you need help. Well, what did we learn today, Megan?
All right, let's grab a few takeaways here. First of all, you probably need a data retention policy if you don't have one. It tells you how long you need to keep your stuff, and it can be more important than you think it is. Second, data retention is not just about housekeeping. It's not just about, making sure everything's tidy and clean. Like there are actual stakes in your data retention policies, and some of that has to do with potential litigation. This is sort of like planning for the rainy day. So your data is both an opportunity of your historical information and statistics and all that kind of stuff, but also a risk, because if you are served a request for information, you have to turn stuff over. And particularly for folks who are working in the hot button mission areas that are worried about coming under, intense scrutiny or investigation from the government or anything like that, now would be the time to get your data in order so that you don't have to give over more information than you need to. Is that it, Jess?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll just say if you're like, where do I start? I believe we have an app for that on our website. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. All right. Well, Meghan, as always, thank you for being here. And folks, if you enjoyed this episode, do me a huge favor, share it with a friend. If you've got a friend at a nonprofit in a mission area that's under threat right now, just send them the link to this episode. It really does help us out, and it helps people find the show. If you have a question or a story to share, we'd love to hear from you. So send me a note online at charitytherapy.show, and thanks for listening.